Welcome back to another Procreate tutorial. Today we're going to walk through how to create this beautiful digital paper cut fall scene. I'm including a free color palette for you to use if you'd like to follow along. We're going to start by creating a new canvas at this plus icon right here. We're going to use a square for this. The first thing I like to do with my digital paper cuts is draw a quick sketch so I know about where I'm going to have everything. Let's double tap close to black. And you can grab any pencil, and we're going to sort of outline where we think we want to place everything. I know I want to have kind of a rough organic feel to this with a few different layers. I want to have some tree trunks on the edge with some different branches, maybe meeting at the top. And then these will be covered in leaves. Your sketch can be as detailed as you need it to be. I'm keeping this pretty rough because I know already what I'm going to do. We're going to have some pumpkins on the front here, a little sign on this side. Maybe we'll have some mushrooms growing out over here. And some more in the front on this side. I know we're going to have a deer in the middle here. And maybe a big branch here, we're going to have a squirrel. All right, so that is super, super rough. But I just like to get a vague idea of where everything's going to go. If you're feeling really confident, you don't have to do this step, but I do highly recommend it. I'm going to go ahead and rename this layer to Sketch. And take the opacity down to about 35%. Now we're going to need some more layers underneath this. And you can do as many as you like. I usually recommend anywhere from 4 to 6 or 7 to get a really nice look here. And the more paper cut layers you have, the more layers you're going to need because each of these is going to need anywhere from 3 to 5 in their group by the end. So depending on your iPad and its memory and all that, you can check in your canvas information and come to layers, and you can see how many you have available. So if you think you're going to run out, you may want to do a couple less layers. For this example, we'll take it down just so this video isn't too long. We'll do 5 layers. And we're going to grab this dark brown here. And I have a really big monoline brush that I like to use for this. I'm just going to do this basic rough outline here and then color drop outside of that. And I think I might pull this out a little bit to make this hole bigger. So we're going to use our transform tool. And I like to use the warp function for this. Turn on advanced mesh. And then you can kind of nudge this independently a little bit. You can play with these nodes and handles. Especially if you have an organic shape like this, it works really well. For these sides, I already know the tree trunks are going to be there, so that can go pretty far over. And there's going to be leaves at the top, so I'm really most concerned about this bottom section here. All right, that looks pretty good. And then I'm going to go to the next layer underneath and pick a little bit of a lighter, different color. Maybe this brown here. And again, pretty organically, just draw around this. You can cross over and under, whatever looks good. And then color drop outside of that. So if you look at that layer on its own, you can see it's filled in those edges. If it's missed any, you can come in and fill those in. and tap and hold on this again to get out of isolation mode. So we're going to continue filling in these layers and then we'll add some elements to this. The first thing I want to do is get my trees added to this top layer. I'm going to come and add a layer right above that. Let's sample this color. And I'm just going to add a tree trunk here. And you do want to close these off because it's on its own layer. And that way you can color drop to fill it in. And I'm keeping these pretty organic, a little bit gnarled of a look there. I think I want this to come out and over a little bit more. Okay, and then I'm going to add some branches onto this. We need this big one that I know the squirrel is going to sit on. And then some more branches that are going to reach up here where these other leaves are going to go. And just think about a real tree, they're going to have different sizes. The branches are going to go in different directions. They're not going to be perfect lines. And that's okay, that's a good thing. And then what I like to do is push and hold my eraser, so I'm still erasing with a monoline brush. And then you can come in here and just kind of chop the edges off some of these so they look a little more like a real paper cut. And if you're really cutting paper, it's pretty hard to get these super round edges like this. So this kind of gives it that look. Once I'm happy with how my trees look, I'm actually going to combine them with this layer by pinching them together. And now they're all on one layer like that. The next thing we're going to do is add some leaves onto this. I do like to do this on another layer initially in case I want to move them around. Now for the ease of this video, I do have some templates that I'm going to use, but you could of course just draw leaves by hand as well. A really good brush for this is either the Studio pen or the syrup brush. You can just draw leaves. Fill them in, draw different kinds. I know generally one tree would have one type of leaf, but sometimes it's nice to give them a little bit of a different look. But you can try different things and see what look you like. I'm going to go ahead and get my leaf template loaded on here and then I'll be right back. This is the leaf template that I'm going to use. I'm basically going to be changing the size of this and duplicating it a bunch of times and placing it around on these branches. Since this is my original, I'm going to go ahead and duplicate that once and hide this so I have it as a backup. And then I'm going to duplicate this quite a few times, always this bottom one. And then I'm going to select all of these by swiping to the right, come to my transform tool and adjust the size of these so it's more in proportion to this tree. I think that's a bit better. And now I can come to these individual layers and move these around, rotate them, slightly change the size again, whatever I need to do to give this a little bit more of an organic look. You can use this flip horizontal or vertical as well to give them a little bit of a different look. And I'm thinking about where these stems are meeting up with these branches. If I need to erase a little bit of the stem, I can do that later. And if they overlap, that's okay, because leaves are going to do that. So that's all the leaves I have in this first set. What I'm going to do is pinch these all together, all except for this backup one. I'm going to take 2 fingers and swipe to the right. That's going to turn on alpha lock with this checkerboard pattern here. I still have my brown color selected. I'm going to tap on this and choose fill layer. And now they're all going to look like they're blended in there. Let's turn alpha lock off. I'm going to drag this down and add those on to that other layer. And then I'll repeat that process until I feel like the tree is as filled in as I'd like it to be. And you could continue this, adding as many leaves as you want. We're going to go ahead and stop there. The next thing we're going to do is add our little squirrel friend here. You can, of course, draw him yourself, but for this video, I'm just going to use a template. And these are all templates that I drew originally. If you're going to use a template, you do want to make sure that you have permission to use it. I'm just doing this for the sake of the speed of this video. I don't want it to be an hour long. All right, so I'm gonna add in all of my other elements and then we're gonna decide which layers they should go on. Once you have everything pretty well placed, you can go ahead and either delete or turn off your sketch. And we're going to think about what layers these need to go on. The squirrel seems like it really needs to be part of this tree layer. That's how it would probably get cut out. Let's go ahead and tap on that layer. Turn on alpha lock, and we still have this brown color selected, so we can just go ahead and fill. Turn that off and combine it. I believe I'm going to have the deer all the way at the back, so let's drag her down here. Turn on alpha lock. We can sample this layer. Fill that. That looks pretty good. Pumpkins probably are going to be in this orangey yellow layer. I think that would look good. Let's bring these ones right here and this single pumpkin a little bit further back. In order to stay organized, I like to put these above the one I'm going to attach them to later. Sample and fill. Sample and fill. Those are looking pretty good. Now this single mushroom probably needs to be at least a layer above that. Let's grab that one, slide it down here, turn on alpha lock. We'll sample this color, fill that one. And in order for it to look like it's actually attached to this paper, we need to move it down just a little bit. There we go. Our sign, I think, is going to be on that same layer as well. So it looks like it's behind this top layer. And what I'd like to do is write the words Happy Fall on the sign. In order to do that in Papercut, what we can do is actually just erase. Let's grab our eraser, make sure that it's pretty small. I'm going to use a monoline brush. And we can just zoom in. You can either do this with a font or just erase it by hand, which is what I'm going to do. And when we put the shadows and highlights on this, this is going to look like it's actually cut out. And the last thing we need to decide is where to put these mushrooms. They probably are going to be behind the sign at least. Let's do that. Maybe the same layer as these pumpkins. They could be kind of growing out of the side of the wall there. Now we can either adjust these and rotate them a little bit, or we can actually fill that in with a brush as well. Now our next step is going to be turning this 3D by adding some shadows and highlights. We're going to go ahead and group these together now that we have them all in the right order. Anything that's the same color, we're going to pinch so it's all one layer. This is going to make it so we have less layers to deal with when we're making these 3D. So we need to create shadow and highlight layers for all 5 of these. We're going to swipe to the left to duplicate twice, always the bottom one. And then we're going to group these and name them. Just keeps your layers panel really clean and organized. Now what we need to do in each group is make the bottom layer black and the middle layer a lighter shade of that color. We're going to come to our bottom layer, go to Adjustments, Hue, Saturation, and Brightness, and we're going to take this brightness all the way down to none. That will turn it black. Select the middle layer, come back to Adjustments, Hue, Saturation, and Brightness, and we're going to take this up in the range of 60 to 70%. Darker colors can go a little bit brighter. You just want to have a really good contrast between these two. And we're going to repeat that for these other groups. Now we're going to move our shadows in one direction and our highlights in the other. Tap on your bottommost shadow layer and you're going to swipe to the right on all of your other shadows to multi-select. Come to your arrow, which is the transform tool. You might need to shrink this down a little bit to see. We're just going to tap a little bit on this bottom left corner. This is going to nudge those shadows over. If you zoom in, you can see they're starting to come out a little bit. And you can do this as much or as little as you want, depending on how strong you want your shadows to be. Then we're going to do the exact opposite with our highlights. Select your bottommost highlight layer, swipe to the right on all of the other ones, come to your transform tool, and tap on the opposite corner. And this you usually need a bit less. What this is doing is creating the edge of your paper. So depending on how thick you want your paper to appear. That's how much you want to tap. Then we're going to go ahead and blur those shadows, and this we actually have to do individually. Let's come to our top shadow here. This is our trees. We're going to come to the magic wand, our adjustments menu, come down to Gaussian blur, and we can just slide this across the screen here. And this is giving us a really nice blur on our shadow there. And if we wanted to have a little more of offset, it would look like that paper is further away. The more blur and the more offset and the darker your shadow is, the further away that's going to look. And then I like to collapse this group so I know that I'm done with it. And we just repeat this process for all of the other shadows. If the shadow is a little bit too strong, you can tap this N here and take that opacity down a little bit. The last thing we're going to do is add a background to this, and then we can add some paper texture to take this up a notch. We need to add a layer underneath all of this, but above where it says background color. Let's add a new layer and just drag that underneath our deer group. For this, I'm going to use a really pale orange, maybe something like this, but even a little bit lighter. A little more yellow tone. And I'm just going to color drop that in there. And I think I might even give this a little bit of a gradient, just for fun. Grab some brighter yellow here. Let's add a new layer on top of this. I'm going to change this blend mode to add and grab a soft brush. You can find this in the airbrushing set in Procreate. And it's at about half opacity here. I'm just gonna come in, make a little bit of a glow here. And then I'm gonna blur that a little bit so it smooths out. The other thing that I like to do in a scene like this is add some fireflies. I just think it looks really cool. If you have some kind of a starburst brush, you can do this with either white or a really light shade of yellow. And just put a few of those in. Looks pretty neat. Now, in order to get our paper texture, there's a couple different options. You can put one texture over the whole thing by adding a layer right at the top, either inserting a file or a photo depending on where you have your texture saved. Make sure that it's covering your entire canvas. And then you just need to change the blend mode. Overlay usually works pretty well for these. And now you have paper texture on your entire piece. And that looks pretty good, but if you want to take it up even more, you can actually put different textures on each group. Let me show you what that looks like. In this one, obviously I have more layers as well, but you can see different groups have different paper textures on them. And it just gives it a little bit more of a unique look. But it's totally up to you what you'd like to do. I hope you found that helpful.